strong in conceptualizing architecture. Here, for instance, in a tea house in a nature reserve in the east of Holland, where the landscape is literally incorporated in the interior. Next. Where public domain has been highlighted to such an extent that a housing scheme really is all about public domain. Next. Or the can-do mentality of architects' offices who are asked to design a bar, but then had to remove a basketball field that was there located temporarily. And to avoid this kind of clash between the younger generation and the well-to-do, they said, well, why don't we just combine the two, like a basketball field on top of the bar. So this is the basket bar. Next. Or dry humor, also as a kind of asset for Dutch architecture, where you cannot see any difference anymore between the roof and the walls. Next. Or another basic quality of Dutch architecture is a kind of excessive skill to do something cheaply and nicely. Next. Or another interesting attitude, which is to dramatize an artificial landscape. Here in the building by MVRDV for the Hanover Expo in 2000, where they were literally stacking different landscapes on top of each other and representing the entire Dutch geography in one building. Next. So this was then. This was in the last 10 years, and this was the architecture that was so hugely popular in the Netherlands and abroad. But of course, we cannot just continue as if nothing happens. We have to address new urgent issues, as we all have to do. So for instance, this picture that shows the implications of climate change in many different fields, in many different areas of the world. Of course, we also have to deal with that as the Netherlands. Next. And here was a picture, and the next one and the next one, that cannot be shown on this computer. I already checked that. This was a picture showing the Netherlands, this tiny little country, with two basic tasks, challenges. One, this picture was showing the Dutch will, showing the Dutch ambition to expand their cities. Next. Well, you skipped them, but you already had the second one. The next picture was the urgent need for Holland to accommodate the water, the rising sea levels, but also the rising risk of floods because of the melting glaciers in the Alps. We need to accommodate much more water. So here we have two basic challenges of the Dutch design world. On the one hand, to deal with sprawl, urban sprawl. On the other hand, to deal with water. And both are clashing because they require completely different attitudes and techniques. So we need to deal with a design which cannot just continue being nice, dry humorous, conceptual, skillful or artificial. We need to rethink our design attitude, once again, rethink it, redefine the issues, and think about an architecture of consequence. Next. So, this is about the recalibration of architecture. Not just continuing the way it did, not just relying on the fame that it acquired in the past, but redefine the issues, and in order to do so, redefine what architecture is all about. So, recently in this book, Architecture of Consequence, we identified 7 big issues for architecture to be inspired by, to be fueled by, to be energized by. Next. One is food. I will come back to that. Next. The other is health. Next. Energy. Space. Time. Next. Social cohesion and value creation. And you may think, what the hell has this to do with architecture? Are we discussing architecture here? But this is exactly what the calibration is about. Is reorientation of the discipline to the biggest issues of our time. This is about reconnecting what architects can do, what design can do, what urbanists can do, vis-à-vis the urgent needs of society. Because these are, of course, existential dimensions. Take one out and you die. Right? This is no longer about self-expression or style or the latest fashion. This is about architecture that deals with existential dimensions of our life. We need a value creation because we need economy. We need time and space. Without it, life is not worth to live. We need our health, we need energy, we need food, we need social cohesion. We need some dialogue in society. And the question is, of course, in this urgent situation where we all deal with these issues, not just the Dutch, these are universal issues. We share that, just as we share the European city. We share also these notions. We have to address, as designers, those issues and see what we can do. And this is about the calibration. Next. Food production should only rise because the world population rises. So the bio industry will increase. So these kind of pictures, when there are epidemics in the food industry, will only occur more often. Do we accept this? Next. Or health. This is what we are going to see more often and often as only one part of the health problems that we can face. You have not that problem, but in Holland we have, for instance, the aging problem. We call it the graying of society. You are a young people, and the Dutch are, on the average, pretty old. So we need to think about the health issues of a huge part of the population that will retire soon and will be taken care of, need to be taken care of by designers who think about concepts for older people. Next. Energy. The battle for energy, which is a global battle. Next. The lack of space because of the threat to our life worlds because of natural disasters. Next. The traffic jams that take so much time, so much precious time of our life. And the 24-hour economies that make us in a kind of permanent frenzy, a permanent panic, not to miss anything. But do we really have still the quality time, the slow time that makes life worth it? Next. And here you see the signs of a society which starts to polarize, which starts to become hostile to other groups, and what the spatial implications are of that. Next. And here you see how we are living in a society here in Holland, examples of destroying value rather than rebuilding it or using it. Next. So what is an architecture of consequence? What is an architecture that really confronts those issues? Not just mitigates, not just adapts to it, but really confronts those issues. Really takes its responsibility as a discipline and say, hey, we are not just a facilitatory service to clients. We are not just a kind of technique or a kind of accommodation of needs that other people define. No, what can the discipline of architecture do actually to confront those issues and to come up with completely new typologies that help us to make our life in the next 2-3 decades really beautiful? Next. Where we need it, architecture has a chance. In Holland, this is a big issue. Maybe you don't know it, but in our country, 50%, 50% of the architects in the last 2 years were fired from their offices. Layoffs to such a dramatic degree that people start to wonder, how can one single profession become such a victim of the economical crisis? This cannot be just a dip in economy. There must be a kind of, this must be a signal that architecture apparently has been marginalized so much that they can be reduced from the building industry by 50%. So that must mean something. If you look at the 7 big challenges, the major issues of our time, you cannot think that way any longer. You cannot think we don't need architecture. We do need architecture to solve those issues. Maybe the clients do not know it yet. Maybe society hasn't identified